So I'm in Greensboro, North Carolina. And this is a city with a population of 304,000 that's rising quickly. Just like neighboring Durham, North Carolina, the statistics and all the city stuff here are pretty much the same. It's been basically rising steadily since the city was established in the 1800s. And North Carolina is a state that people are flocking to, and with good reason. It's 42% black, 39% white, 9% Hispanic, and 4% Asian. So it's really diverse. The average age is 34, and 17% of the population is seniors. So it's a little bit younger of a population than a lot of cities. And this is another one of those cities where the male-female ratio is off. It's showing 46% male, 54% female. This is one of the, I've been seeing a lot of cities that are 47-53, but this is the first time I've seen 46-54. That is a huge difference in the number of males and the number of females in a city. They have a 50% home ownership rate here, which is 22% lower than the national average. But in a larger city like this, to have anything that's 50% or above, in my opinion, is they're doing good. Having more people renting, or having less people renting and more people owning, is always good for a city, because people that have a stake in a city are less likely to commit crimes in the city. I'm just trying to look and see what the, there we go, what the GPS was telling me to do. All right, so the median home value here is $163,000, which is considerably cheaper. Durham, I think, was $243. Durham's about, I think, 30-40 minutes from here. And their median home value was, I think, $243,000. So it's a little cheaper here. $163,000 is the average price for a house. And the median rent here is also much cheaper, $893 a month. But the two cities are basically the same size. I think Greensboro is slightly larger, but only by like a few thousand people. The average income is around $41,000 a year. And there's an 18% poverty rate, which sounds like a high number. Sounds like a high number, but it's fairly typical. So basically 1 in every 5 people-ish live below the poverty line. There's a 36% marriage rate. So just over a third of the adults are married. 53% of the people were born here that live here, and that number is probably low just because the population is rising so quickly that there's a lot of people just moving in from other places. It's showing 12% foreign born. 12% of the population is foreign born. And they're showing 7% non-citizens, which every time I hear any non-citizen rate, I question it, because, you know, again, somebody has to say they're not a citizen. They have to tell you that in order for you to know, or they have to be registered somehow as a non-citizen where the city can find that statistic. I don't believe any city that tells you those numbers. It could be, they're saying 7%, it's probably twice that then, if they're telling you 7, because anytime they tell you those kind of numbers, it's never it's never accurate. So as far as the homicides go, prior to 2020, they had 30 to 45 a year. In 2020, it jumped up to 60. Then 2021 jumped down to 53, and 2022 down to 40. So just like pretty much every city in America, 2020 caused a spike in violent crime, a spike in all crime for that matter, but a spike in violent crime. And the good thing for this city is they managed to bring it back down. It peaked, and now they're right back down to where they were pre-2020. Their murder rates are in the low teens, except 2020 it jumped up to 20 was the murder rate in 2020. A murder rate in the low teens is worse than regular city bad, like worse than what you'd expect just from living in the city, but not really all that bad either. My opinion, a murder rate of 10 is about regular city bad. It's just what you're going to expect and what you're going to get when you live in a city. And so a murder rate in the low teens, if it's, 13, even 14, that's still pretty good for a city. It's not, it's definitely, it might sound like a big number, but it's not something that would deter you from wanting to live somewhere. This downtown is kind of like a small downtown for how big the city is. It feels really small. I mean, it's big, but it feels really, it's got like a really small feel to it. The assault rates here pre-2020 were mostly in the 400s. And that's per 100,000 people. Whenever I say a rate, like a murder rate or an assault rate, it's per 100,000 people. It's how they gauge the number of murders so that you can compare apples to apples. They gauge it by a per 100,000 people. So since 2020, it's been in the mid 600s. So their assault rate here went up in 2020, and unlike their murders, that never came back down. At least it hasn't yet. And for a gauge of, so you can get an idea of what an assault rate and these murder rates. So their murder rate jumped up to 20, and the murder rate typically in Chicago is 22. Chicago has a huge population. They can absorb a lot of crime. And so the murder rate, let's go this way. So a murder rate of, when they hit 20, they were just better than what Chicago did that year, and what Chicago does pretty much every year. Their assault rates were in the 400s. They're in the mid 650s, is in around that. And again, comparing to Chicago, I think is around, their assault rate I think is around 530. So they were better as far as assaults go than Chicago pre-2020, and since 2020, their assaults are worse than Chicago when you do it on a per capita basis. Their theft rates are in the 2,500 to 2,800 range. And again, that's on a per 100,000 people basis. And that's been the same for years. That didn't go up. That's a little high, but pretty typical of any larger city. Now it looks like we're leaving the city. Now we're getting out into like the suburbs, it feels like. That downtown was really small. But we're literally right out of downtown, and you feel like you're in the middle of the woods. It's kind of pretty. So the violent crime here is 122% higher than the national average, which I consider anything, you know, in the upper, you know, 80 to 100,000, that's like regular city bad. It's just what you expect when you live in a city. So 122, it's worse than regular city bad, but it's still not in any kind of like, you know, warning area where it's, you shouldn't go there or you shouldn't, you know, want to live there or something like that. It's just a little worse than regular city bad. Yeah, we're going to turn here and we'll get back in the city a little bit. Property crime is at 94% higher than the national average. Again, just that's kind of like regular city stuff. If you live in city limits of a city, there's a certain level of crime you just have to accept. You don't really have to accept it, but you have to expect it. And this falls right into that. It ranks in the bottom 10% for crime in the U.S. among cities that report crime. So it's in the bottom 10%, but it's still, I don't know how they figure that. The cities that report, you can't compare it to a city with a population of 6,000 that has zero crime. So those kind of cities are at the top of the list too. So it's not really based on cities with the same population, but it's not considered like a safe city. But statistically, if the numbers they're giving you are, you know, accurate, it's not safe, but it's not by any means a bad city either. Your odds of becoming a victim of any crime are 1 in 22, which is a little high, but kind of just typical of a city of this size. And the year-over-year crime is showing an increase of 5%, which isn't a big number unless that continues for multiple years. If it's a spike year, it spiked up one year and then it goes back down the next year, it's fine. If it continues on that trajectory, things can go out of control fast here, especially with their quickly rising population. The cost of living here is like just slightly better than the national average, so it's relatively on the cheaper side for a city of its size. The schooling though in North Carolina is not good at all. North Carolina as a state graduates 43% of their kids graduate proficient at reading and math, and here it's only 41%. The US average is 48. I mean, the US average is horrible, and North Carolina is worse than the US average, and Greensboro is even worse than that. 87% of the people that live here completed the 8th grade, and 86% are high school graduates. And it's showing 37% of the people that live here have a bachelor's degree. So over a third of the people that live here have at least a bachelor's degree. And that must be they have a huge influx of people, and the people that must be the people that are moving in, because the kids that are graduating in these high schools, the majority of them aren't learning anything, and they're probably not going on to school. So if you want to compare it to Durham, it's cheaper, it's slightly larger, not by a lot. Both cities were clean. This must be the homeless park on the left right there. That must be where the homeless people live, because there's a couple of look like mobile tents on wheels. But yeah, even back into the park, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of homeless people in that park right there. But it's relatively clean, especially for a city of its size. Little bits of graffiti here and there, but there's not full walls and huge things painted everywhere. The pavement on the streets is, you know, it's drivable. It's not all potholes and everything like a lot of cities. I can see why people are moving here. But that's a lot of the cities in North Carolina, of these larger ones, a lot of them have the same looking, if you look at their population growth, they have similar charts. They all are going up at a very, very sharp rate. And it's a state that's relatively safe. They actually, at least as far as what they report, you know, you got to go on that of what they report. A lot of the bigger cities here in the state, they're relatively safe for a city of their size. What's down this road? Let's check out one of these alleys. Oh, that you don't want to turn down. I thought that would go through, but that looks like a dead end. Yeah, here's where there's homeless. That guy's just sleeping right there. The guy's blowing the leaves right around him. There's graffiti all up on that door by them. So comparing this though to Durham, I would say Durham is, of the two, the safer and better option, just by looking at them and looking at the stats. Either of them would be a good, this one would be cheaper. This one has more homeless people. But either of them would be a wise choice. The schooling was about the same on both of them. Neither one was significantly better. I gotta put the window up. That music YouTube takes your channel down if you hear any music in the background and someone's got their radio blaring. And yeah, I got to keep talking over it so that they can't hear the music, because that happens. A car will drive by with some song playing, and your whole video can't be on YouTube because of that, unless you cut that little section out. It's so dumb. Okay, dude, come on. Come on, dude. I'm going. Okay, well, there isn't much more. The GPS has got me making a U-turn, so I'm going to make a U-turn right here in the middle of the street and drive up on this curb to do the U-turn. Yeah, more graffiti here, more homeless people. You got the homeless people. This city actually has a lot of homeless people. I'm glad I drove around a little longer than I did. I was going to stop it back there a ways. But now I'm back on the same road. There was homeless people on that corner. They got this guy here that's sleeping by the guy that's blowing the leaves. But that's something that the city can fix if they want to. They can fix the graffiti. They can fix the garbage problems, which this city doesn't have, and it doesn't really have a graffiti problem, although there is graffiti, but it's not a huge problem that at least what I've seen. The homeless probably is a problem here. I don't know that for sure. But just by the number of homeless I've seen, I would just guess that it's a problem. And that's, again, all those three things are things that the city can fix. And so those are the streets. The streets are really good. You know, the things that the city can't fix the crime unless they put people in jail. And oftentimes they don't want to put people in jail, so the crime just keeps getting worse. So the crime thing, you know, yes, they can fix it, but that's a harder fix than these simple things like picking up the garbage, painting over graffiti, building a shelter for the homeless people, or finding a place for them. Those are fixable problems if a city wants to fix them. And this city's doing pretty good on all that stuff except for the homeless problem. I mean, they got all this road construction, so they're trying to fix the roads, at least the ones that apparently were bad. But for the most part, the roads were decent. All right, well, I'm going to let this play out for just a little bit longer. And I hope you enjoyed that drive through Greensboro, North Carolina.